Well, I'm Lindsay, and I'm super excited to be introducing one of my really close friends, Laura. And so, for those of you that don't know Laura, Laura is the chief of all things at Wise Advice, with her business partner, Diana, both active duty military spouses, launched their business 8 years ago. I had the pleasure of sharing an office space with Laura here in Colorado Springs. Saw her start up a business, grow a business. She employs now how many military spouses on the team?
30.
30 military spouses. Their team being virtual, one of the things that's really cool is to watch how Laura's been able to retain 80% of her organization with this virtual workforce all over the country. With, as most of us know as military spouses here, we're always dealing with a deployment or a broken refrigerator or a dog that bit the neighbor when our spouses are gone. Murphy's Law always sets in, and she's been able to do that and thrive. So when we talked about what could our community really benefit from, the subject of leadership came up. And Laura really exemplifies what it means to be a leader, and a leader in a changing market, a leader that has dealt with a lot of ups and downs over the years and continues to show up and thrive for her team. So I couldn't think of anyone else better to talk about leadership than Miss Laura Early. So Laura, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lindsay. You're so kind. Love doing life and work with you. And I am super passionate about leadership. I am one of those like kind of leadership juggernaut people. Like if there is an assessment to take, if there's a book to read, like I want to just do it. I want to do all the things. So we're going to dive into this. I wanted to say just from the beginning, this is a loaded topic. Developing your leadership style is not something, I hate to disappoint you, that you're going to do in an hour call and then you're set for life. I wish. It's not. It's something that's constantly developing. It's something that you're going to stretch and learn in your different roles that you're in. And it's really an evolving process. And all the best leaders are constantly learning. They're really, truly lifelong learners. They're students of themselves and really seeking new opportunities to look for it. So we're going to dig in, hopefully give you guys some really tangible things. I want to make sure it's a little bit discussion based as well, because we all have things to teach each other. Sarah, if I could get sharing permissions, that would be awesome. And I can, I have some
I
slides.
did that. You got
I'm not
it.
a big slide person, so I've got a couple for you, but we'll jump in.
Well, and Laura, if I can interject,
Yeah.
Laura knows we know each other so well that we'll just interject each other all the time. And I'm not going to do that all the time. But what I do want to say is I am the MC. So if you want to pop your questions into the chat, I can read them as they come up and just kind of interject so that we have that discussion. Because as Laura mentioned, this is a discussion based format. This isn't you guys just sitting back and learning. We really want you guys to walk away with tangible outcomes that you can implement. So if you have questions, things that Laura touches on something and you're like, ooh, what does this mean? Or how can I do that? Pop it into the thing and we'll get a discussion going here.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Lindsay. And feel free to always interject. I would say too, if there's something that you came today with, like you signed up for this, you came because you're like, I really want to learn this, or I wanted to ask this question, or success for me in this session would look like this. I love that. Drop it in the chat. I've been known to pivot completely because of questions. So I'm happy to answer those. So we'll talk about leadership style. This is my leadership team, or some of them, not all of them. They're not all in the shop, but we are an all female leadership team, which is really fun and something different that we love, but they are amazing women that walk alongside us at Wise. As Lindsay said, I'm the Chief Experience Officer, co-founder of Wise Advise and Assist team. Those of you who are not familiar with Wise and our little owl, we are a virtual assisting agency, but more than that, we're a business growth agency. We partner with clients to grow and scale their businesses through tangible support, virtual assisting, digital marketing, web design, graphic design, and more things. We've been doing it now for over 8 years. So I've graduated from being a startup to an official small business, which is fun. We love what we do. I'm also a toddler mom. I'm living in my toddler mom era. I was Miss Rachel for Halloween this year. So all my toddler parents out there, just living our best lives with a little. So I had to stick her face up here because, isn't she the cutest little pink bunny you've ever seen? So I'm also learning to lead in my home in a new way, because I really believe that leadership is so much more than just a position or a role. It's a behavior, it's a lifestyle, and leading in your role as a friend, as a family member, parent, as a boss, all take on different things. So this is my toddler mom era. It's a vibe. So all of you with older kids, I call Lindsay all the time. I'm like, please give me all the advice. How did you survive this? How does one tiny human just dictate so much of your life? Anyway, so this is what we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna talk about what is a leader. We're gonna talk about who are you, because if you don't know who you are, you can't lead. What kind of leader do you want to be? How that folds into your leadership style. And then the last thing we'll kind of talk about is your leadership mission, or as what I like to call it, your leadership anchors. Here we go. So this is where we need some participation. What is a leader? What is a leader? No wrong answers.
Somebody who can inspire and motivate.
Yeah.
Towards
I like that.
towards a specific goal.
Love that.
Yeah, I was going to say somebody that influences others to reach a certain objective.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Something that I implement into my vernacular, because it's kind of who I am, is leadership to me means trailblazing, going where others haven't and paving the path for those so that it's smoother for them.
Yes, love it.
I'm a very analytical brain, so it's the person that the buck stops at. Who's at the top of the chain? Who's making the decision?
Yeah, yeah. It's all of those things. And as we go into leadership style, which is the topic, it is important to define your definition of leadership, which Lindsay always queuing me up for a good one. For Lindsay, it's trailblazing. That's a huge part of what a leader is to her. So I would encourage you to really think about what your definition of a leader is. And if you're like me, smart people, we don't reinvent the wheel. We look to some of the greats for some of that. So some of my favorite definitions of leadership are these. So my BFF Brene, one day, Brene, Michelle Obama, and I will just be best friends hanging out in a backyard someday. It's going to happen. I love it. But my BFF Brene says a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. It's one of my favorite definitions of leadership, because I like to challenge folks where leadership is so much more than just a position and a title. It's a behavior. You can be the head of an organization and not actually be a leader. You can have a whole lot of followers. So that's one of my favorites. Another one is Gandhi's: a sign of good leader is not how many followers you have, but how many leaders you create. This is a huge one that's really defining for me and my leadership, because thinking about who am I raising up behind me? Because if all you do is lead and you have a bunch of followers and something happens to you and what you've created, a lot of us are small business owners or agents, and all of that goes away. What have you done? What's your legacy as a leader? That's been a word for me over the last year, is like, what's the legacy that you're creating in lots of different areas in your work, in your family, in your role. So I love this one by Gandhi. Another one that I look at is it's a long one, but it's Simon Sinek. Leadership is a responsibility. It's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. Though you might have the rank, that doesn't make you a leader. We call you leader not because you're at the top. We call you a leader because you choose to take the risk to go first into the unknown, first into the danger, to protect your people and to help them achieve more than they thought they were capable of. So those are some of my favorites. They're on my wall because I love, Lindsay knows this, I love a good quote. If I could have just walls of quotes, I would. I love them. So I would encourage you can steal these ones if you like them, but go find some quotes, read some books. There's lots of them. I have several of them in my stack right here that I love, and really think about what a leader is to you. What is the definition of a leader? What does that represent for you? And then the second step to take it further would be what Lindsay did earlier. Take it into your own words. Brene's and Simon's and Gandhi's words are awesome and perfect, and I quote them regularly. But what is your version of that? What does it look like to you? And specifically taking that a third step into what does that look like in the role you sit in now, because leadership looks different in each seat that you sit in. It's going to call on a different part of you, depending on what the responsibility is. Are you leading a big team? Are you leading 2 people? Is it you? Are you building a team? Are you leading from not the top seat? Because I really believe that you lead from where you are. It's not a role. So are you not the president, founder of the organization, but you have a role within the organization? How are you leading from the seat that you're in? So again, homework. Sorry, lots of homework today. That's the first step, is figuring out what it means to you to be a leader.
Well, Laura, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, go.
If you're stuck on what it means to you to be a leader, sometimes it's easier to define what leadership isn't. And I don't know about you guys, but we're all of the age where we've worked for folks. We've seen great leaders. We've seen poor leaders. And when I was defining my leadership style, it was almost it was easier for me to look at what defines a poor leader,
Mm-hmm.
and really hone in on, like when Laura's alluded to it multiple times, like positional leadership. Those are people that have titles. They've been given a team. They are put there because they are told this is what you're going to be doing. But I can't tell you how many times in corporate I would gravitate to somebody else that wasn't leading from position, but was leading from a different place that I respected and that I listened to. And so when you think about your leadership style, for me, it was almost reflecting on, like, what do I not want to be? Like, I'm not a great micromanager. I don't want to be in other people's like little titty bitty details all the time. I've worked for those people and I don't love it.
Yeah. And we'll
So
talk a little bit more about that in a second as we go through, but yes, absolutely. What is a leader? What is a leader not? I think that's important. And you'll see that as we go into some of these next phases of this, is like, it's important to also know, like Lindsay said, what do you not want to be? Because something beautiful about each of us in our own style as we go into it is like, we're all unique people, uniquely created individuals. We're not going to be the same. And if you're just trying to copycat, oh, Lindsay's a great leader, she's successful, she's done all these things, I'm going to be just like Lindsay. So I'm going to hike on trails every day, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to talk like Lindsay, and I'm going to ask these questions. I mean, that's great, but you're not developing your own style. It's only going to take you so far. And we see a lot of that in leadership. And it's flattering because they're trying to emulate the person that taught them or that they walked alongside, but they don't take it that step further and really aligning it with who they are and what their own individual gifts are. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about next. I think in order to really define your leadership style, to really know who you are as a leader and who you want to be, first, you have to know who you are. Who are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are you naturally good at? What is going to be more challenging for you as a leader? And so there are some really awesome tools to be able to do that. The first one that I know Lindsay's a big fan of is the DISC. So the DISC, again, it's a personality assessment. These are not tests, they're assessments. There's no right or wrong answer. But these are really great tools for self-development. Self-awareness first. You have to be self-aware before you can then develop yourself, but these are great tools for self-development and awareness. So knowing where you sit on this, are you a high D? Are you going to have more of a commanding and resolute leadership style? Are you maybe going to be more on the S side of life? Lindsay's more on the high D side of life. I'm more on the S side of life. And so that's why me pretending to be Lindsay it's not going to work, because it's not my natural gifting. I am definitely much more of an affirming, inclusive, not to say that she's not those things, but those are going to be forward for me. I have to work a little bit harder on being more decisive and black and white and communicating that than she does. That's her natural gifting. Whereas she may need some more support understanding the perspective of someone else in the room. Whereas me, I'm going to be like, what does everyone else think first? I'm going to ask them first. So understanding who you are is really important. Another tool that does this, there's a million of them. I've taken them all. So if you have questions on any of them, let me know. I'm a big MBTI fan. So knowing where you sit, MBTI breaks you out. DISC, there's 8 leadership personas within the DISC. In MBTI, there's 16 types, there's 4 temperaments, and each individual 4-letter combination, which we call a type, has even further into it, but the temperaments are great. So you have the idealists, the guardians, the rationals, and the artisans. And these, either DISC, MBTI, Enneagram, Key Performer, Strengths Finder, whatever one speaks to you, because they all speak to different parts. Some of them are values based, some of them are about how you make decisions, some of them are about how you interpret the world. So I am not a believer that one personality assessment reigns higher than the rest. They all will give you knowledge and tidbits and information about yourself. It's just what resonates with you. So in MBTI, again, it talks about the 4 temperaments. So you've got people who are a little bit more abstract, believe in symbols, people who are a little bit more concrete and real, black and white. You have people who are more about autonomy and harmony, people who are on the other side. So this really helps you in learning who you are. It can give you language. And for a lot of people, we know what we're good at and what we're not good at. I can say, what's your strengths? What's your weaknesses? And you might say, well, I'm a really good communicator. I'm really bad at details. And what these tools can do for you is give you language to describe yourself. And I know that it's something that Lindsay uses a lot in her coaching. I use it as well, because a lot of times people just can't put their finger on what that thing is about them. And then the other side of it, especially in the leadership side, is why am I encountering difficulty with another person? Or why am I struggling to get my point across, or struggling with my team? So these tools are not only great for knowing who you are, it's also great to have your teams take, so you know who they are. Because, for example, my husband and I, polar opposite types. How we make decisions couldn't be more different. He lives in a very black and white world. I live in a very gray world. When I make a decision, I'm going to consider everyone else involved in it. I'm going to think about the impact. I'm going to think about like 10 years down there. I'm going to think about all of these loaded, detailed things when I make a decision. When my husband makes a decision, he's going to be like, pro, con, black, white, this is it, go. He's not going to be like, well, how is this person going to think? And what is this person going to think? None of that really enters his mind when he makes a decision, but it does for me. I'm like, well, what's going to happen here? And then the impact of this and that and this. There's strengths on both sides. They're just different. And so now, after many, many years, we now know kind of each other's thought process. Because I used to be like, he just doesn't care. He doesn't care about anyone else. He just cares about himself. He's selfish. He makes decisions selfishly. No, he actually doesn't. He makes them very logically, very analytically, which is very different from me. So this is a really incredible tool when it comes to leading teams, because a lot of times it's not, it's really about understanding the dynamics and who you have on your team. Because something that we discovered in our team is like, we actually have a lot of guardians on our team, a lot of them, like a lot. And I am an idealist. I'm not a guardian. And so I was like, why is no one like, why are we all like, we all agree, like half of them are all like, this is it, this is the answer. And they're all in agreement. What's going on? We went back to temperaments, and I was like, oh man, it's because they're all approaching it from here and I'm approaching it this way. And it really helped us to be able to have meaningful dialogue, because not only does these assessments help you define who you are and who you're not. And again, they're a tool. You can be more than one. You're not in a box. It is a guide. It is not, we can all actually exhibit characteristics in every single, DISC type, in every single, the goal is actually that you become so self-aware that you can be whatever is needed in the situation, that you can kind of be a chameleon. And so that's really why it's such a great tool. So I encourage you, if you haven't taken any sort of assessment as a leader, or if it's been like 5 or 8 years since you've taken one, take the assessment, go further than that, work with a coach maybe that's certified in it, or get some of the great tools. I will tell you that DISC has a lot of great tools. Again, I'm an MBTI person. This is my MBTI Bible. I love this thing. It's called Working Together. It literally goes through every single, like my tabs. Everyone's tabbed that I work with, all my leaders. It goes through every single type. It talks about your characteristics, the implications. How do you work well with other people? How do you approach problems? How are you going to interact with people of different types? So super helpful if you're someone who needs a tangible tool to help guide you through some of those things. And then another
Hey,
thing,
Laura,
yeah,
I was going to jump in and say, if anybody wants to take the DISC that hasn't taken the DISC, I know a lot of people on the call work with our team, but anybody that wants to take it that hasn't taken it, drop your email in the chat and Sarah can definitely get it out. And it goes for anybody on your team. So we get the license for the whole assessment. The DISC that we have is very in depth. You get 70 pages and it talks about your motivations, behaviors. It can even help you define who you are under stress, which is really helpful. Especially if you have a chaotic period and you're like, why am I just, when I'm under stress, I get a little bit more demanding. Poor Sarah knows this and so great at adapting. But it's really important to understand who you are and have that awareness so that you don't become the ugly leader you don't want to become.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite parts about the assessments is not necessarily like they tell you who you are in your natural, like best state. But you guys probably never have this issue, but I'm not at my best all the time. And so I love reading the parts like Lindsay said, where it's like, this is where you go in stress. This is where you go in hurt. This is where you go in frustration. Because I go from being a really like chill, like I don't care too much about the details, to being like absolutely the most controlling person about details when I'm stressed out. I like everything organized must happen. And that is like not my natural at all, but it's where I go. And so it's important to know that when it's happening. So really great. Just again, it's a great place to start. And especially if all you've ever done is kind of strengths and weaknesses, it gives you a lot of language. It gives you a lot of understanding, and it will help you in developing your style. Because depending on, as we're going to talk about next, who do you want to be as a leader? Once you figure out kind of what a leader is to you and who you are, you start thinking about who do you want to be as a leader. These tools will help guide you of like, how much work are you going to have to do to be the type of leader that you want to be? Because you'll know what your strengths are.
And it's almost like looking at it and saying, I think the biggest aha I had from the DISC was like, oh, I am not a great manager. I knew that. I mean, listen, I'm sure everybody on my team knew that. Yet I felt like I had to be this like crazy manager, micromanager of all the things, because I felt like that's what leadership was. And the DISC really said, no, like as long as you care about your people, you love on your people, and you check in with them and you treat them like beautiful human beings, they'll go to the ends of the earth for you. And I just embody that. And Sarah and I have that beautiful relationship with each other. And she's phenomenal. And she knows, like, and we've had such a great relationship because I've just embraced my natural leadership style.
Yeah. Well, and
Sarah might have another tale to tell, but
you have to communicate it. And that's the other part of what you're saying, Lindsay, as well, is like, not only do you need to know who you are and know what your strengths are, you have to communicate those to others. People can't read minds.
No.
People don't know what you're thinking, what you like, what you don't like. And you would hope that after spending a lot of time with you, people would understand things, but we're all a little selfish and we kind of see things through our own lens, our own perspective. Brene talks about the story we tell ourselves when situations happen. And so that's another part of it, is once you understand who you are and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, is communicating those, and then building people around you who have different strengths, who can help, help you in those areas where you're weak. But you cannot just expect, you've done all of this, you've taken the assessments, you have read the books, you've done all the things, but if you don't communicate with other people, especially your fellow leaders on your teams or the people that you're serving, it doesn't do anything. Like people can't, they can't read your mind. So it's important to do that. So the next piece I want to talk about, and Lindsay alluded to this earlier, is you know who you are, you got your strengths, got your weaknesses, you have an understanding of where your natural capabilities are, and maybe what are areas where you have to work harder on. Mine is really being quiet in meetings and listening, letting other people talk. That's an area that I really have to work on in my leadership. I'm also a really curious person, so I ask a lot of questions, which is a strength, but it can also be very irritating to other people. So you have to kind of, learn the limits. But who do you want to be as a leader? So this, like I was saying, Lindsay alluded to earlier, I love to think about people that you have been under their leadership. I think it's a really good place to start. What did you like about them as a leader? Or what's sometimes easier? What did you not like about them? What do you not want to be? And all of us have that story, that person in our experience that we had a negative experience. Maybe it wasn't horrible, but you were under their leadership. You're like, oh, I never want to be that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make that person feel that way. What is that? And write it down. Give language to it and put it out there. And then on the opposite side, I hope, and this isn't always, it isn't always true for people, which is sad, but have you worked under a leader that you thought was a great leader? Or maybe they were a good leader. And what were the characteristics that made them good or great? I had a leader that was super micromanaging also. I hated it every day. It was like, where are you? What have you done? What are you doing? Whatever. And I'm like, I'm a responsible adult. Like if I said I would do this, I will do it. I don't need you to ask me 15 times. I don't. And the more times you ask me, actually, the more times I'm going to be like, no, I'm not going to do it. Because I don't want you to ask me a million times. That's something that really bothers me. So it's something that I really try not to be. What else is it? I had other leaders who, they were like very, very, I don't want to say commanding. They were just very loud leaders. Like everything they said had to be loud and yelling, and it was all a production. Like every meeting was like a production and a show. And I was like, can we get something done? Like, what are we doing here? What's happening? So like, that's something that I don't want to be. I've had leaders that were extremely generous and caring. Like they knew my family members' names. They knew some of my friends' names. They like remembered my birthday. They cared about me. That's important to me. I've had leaders who always, Simon Sinek, they started with why. They always explained why we were doing something and why it was important. I love that. I need to know the why, because if there is no impact and no why for me because of my personality preference, I know about myself, I'm not going to work as hard, and I'm not going to be as interested in it because it's important to me to know why. So that's something that I bring into my style. So what are those things for you guys? I see some of you jotting some things down in notes. I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, come off mute. What are those things? Or tell us about a bad leadership.
Yeah, tell us about
That's
it.
always fun.
I love a bad leader story. We all have social.
Yeah.
Good leader story, or just, what is that one thing? We all have that one thing that comes to our mind of, I don't want to be this, but I do want to be this.
Oh, my trigger is disrespect of my schedule. Like you tell me to do something and then I put all the time into it and then you don't use it or acknowledge it or discuss it or just like, oh, never mind, I don't want that and didn't tell me. Or if you're late to something and if it's habitual, that is immediately like, I'm quitting tomorrow. And I've had that I've worked for numerous nonprofits and they can't get their act together. So I've just stopped being able to help with a lot of nonprofits because it just it's just not a conducive environment for me. But yeah, it's the disrespect of time and schedule and effort.
So boundaries and integrity are really important to you.
Yeah, accountability, just, yeah.
Those would be huge things for you in leadership. Love that. Anyone else?
Yeah, one of my college jobs, I was a supervisor for the member services at Lifetime Fitness in the Springs. And the GM that we had was kind of a very authoritarian sort of rule by fear. And he would, be reviewing security tapes of what the front desk was doing at 10 o'clock at night, or he would be like up at the pretending to work out like on the
Very
treadmills or
Big
whatever,
Brother.
like looking down at the front desk when we didn't know that he was watching. And so as a supervisor, I would sometimes get called to the office and say, hey, so and so is leaning against the counter at 9:45 at night or whatever. It's like, we need to maintain this professional whatever. And it was like you're constantly kind of in fear, looking around like, where's Kevin, what's he gonna say, what's he gonna do, kind of thing. And it was very fear-based, very authoritarian, which to some degree was effective, but because people were afraid of him. But I really don't believe fear is the best motivator, as a leader.
Yeah, well, if people are scared of you, are they going to tell you the truth?
Right.
And are you going to?
And are they going to want to stay there?
Yeah, I mean, trust is such a big part when you talk about Pat Lencioni talks about the 5 behaviors or the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and it's in this pyramid, and at the base of it is trust. And if you don't have trust, you can't have commitment, you can't have good accountability, you can't have healthy conflict, you can't have results. And so fear negates, I feel like, that trust. And like, I didn't sign up to be on Big Brother, like I signed up to be a part of a team. So, wow, that's intense. Michelle, what about you? What's a characteristic that you're like, I want to be this, or I don't want to be this?
I really don't want to be constantly stressed or pushy. I had a boss that was just like, he just was always stressed. Like, you would have thought that the business was going to fail tomorrow, but like it was doing just fine apparently. But you would have never known that everything was a super big deal. And he, was just really pushy. So I want to be not that. I want to be more, just not constantly stressed, just like in a more calm mood, but still like finding the balance of asking for what I need, but like in a polite way, and in a not everything is super urgent type
So
thing.
maybe some consistency. You want to be more consistent in how you show up. So that people kind of know what to expect. Well, I guess you knew what to expect of him, stress monger, but like, you want to be consistent on the other side of things, and approachable. I think, it's really hard to approach people who are like super, you're like, am I going to push the wrong button today?
I like that word, approachable, like approachable leadership, because if you're not, it has been a long leadership journey for me, guys. And I'll tell you about a story that one time early in my leadership journey, I kicked a trash can and yelled at people. And let's just say that was not a fine moment. I had the entire team come to me and said that if I exhibited that behavior again, they would all walk. And I had 16 people on my team at the time. And so if that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what is, but I was not approachable because and so I have really strive to be an approachable leader where my team feels comfortable enough to come to me and say, like, that is a whack idea. I don't think we should do that. Because I want to surround myself with people that are smart and amazing people that can question my reality sometimes. Not sometimes, all the time. Especially if it's a weird reality I'm trying to create.
I'll let you know. Don't worry, Linz. I'm the first in line. Be like,
Sarah, what do you got? Sarah has not
Sarah.
trash kicking Lindsay, and I am very grateful.
Hopefully, Lindsay's never kicked a trash can at you. I would hope.
Oh my gosh, no. I was going to talk about. I love that Lindsay, like you mentioned earlier, Laura. I feel like she saw the potential in me almost 2 years ago, and she's just been working to like develop that in me. I've definitely never had a leader that asked me like what I wanted to do in my position or like where I saw myself within the position. And so that was really cool to see that. And I feel like it's helped me like thrive and like grow in the areas that I wanted to grow in. So I loved that with Lindsay. And then in terms of something I didn't like, I guess I don't like when people like, again, micromanaging. I like to have that trust between me and a leader, and I don't like to be micromanaged. And like you're saying, Laura, like the more they micromanage me, the more I want to pull away and just don't like it.
You're like, I'm not 5. I can do it. Yeah, I love that. And I love that developing potential is a huge thing. It's a huge thing for me. So it leads really well into this kind of last part I want to talk about, and I'm gonna open up for more questions, is once you know who you are, once you know who you want to be or who you don't want to be, the biggest challenge I see in leadership is how are you holding yourself to that? Like, where's the accountability? Where's the motivation to become that? So what I like to call this, sometimes it's a mission statement. If that works for you, go for it. I like to call them our leadership anchors. And these can change. They can change, but you should have some solid ones. What are your leadership anchors? Like, what's going to help you show up every day like the leader you want to be? Because even if the leader we want to be is all in our natural gifting, we are all humans. We all get irritated. We get frustrated. We love our teams. We love people. But y'all, let me be real. And my team knows this. I say this, people suck sometimes. Like, people are not great all the time, right? Like, we struggle. We want to try and do our best. We're all trying to do our best. But sometimes it's not if, it's when. Mistakes will happen. Conflict arises. Things happen. And yeah, I would love to say that in all of my books that I've read and all my assessments that I've taken, that I show up perfectly every time a bad situation arises. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? So what helps me, what guides me even still, are what are my anchors? What are the things I always want to be? My coach that I work with, and I totally believe in coaching because you need to always be growing, and what helps me is accountability for growth, and coaches provide that. One of her anchors is to leave people better than she found them. And I love that. I'm like, I'm going to steal it. I'm going to use it and have permission. I love that one. For me, one of my leadership anchors is to always be curious. And the other one, and this is from Brene, I borrow a lot from her, is to assume positive intent. And those are two things, because I lead teams, I work with people all the time, that are really important for me, because it's really easy for me to jump to a conclusion. And it's like, was I curious? Did I ask questions? Did I think about it from their perspective? And then that comes back to the second one of assuming positive intent, because if I start from a place of Lindsay's intention was not to ruin my day. Like, Lindsay did not wake up in the morning and was like, I'm going to forget to do this just to purposely ruin Laura's day. It's not a thing, right? Most people, if we've chosen our teams well, if we work alongside people, do not intentionally do certain things to annoy you. Also, like, you're not that amazingly cool that everything that your team or people you interact with do, they're thinking about you. Oh, this is really going to annoy her. This is going to have impact here. They're not thinking about you at all. They're thinking about themselves probably. So that is, that's one of those things. Those are two for me that really help ground me, especially in this season, as I'm facing a lot of challenges. I'm also developing a lot of young leaders. And another one for me was last year was teach, not tell. Was a really good leadership anchor for me. It's real easy to tell people what to do. It's really hard to coach them and teach them and spend the time. So those are them for me. Those are some examples that I've had over the years. I would encourage you to take, again, who you are, who you want to be, who you don't want to be, how you want to show up, and begin to develop some anchors for yourself. And don't just like write them down on your piece of paper or have them in your otter notes from today and close it and never look at it. I want some Post-its. I have them on Post-its on my screen, on my laptop, because I work virtually. Put it on your office wall on a Post-it. Put it on your mirror at home. Put it on your steering wheel. Put it somewhere that you're going to see it. And it's actually going to be a reminder for you. If you are a paper planner person, you can write it in your planner. If you actually open it, I'm one of those people that loves a paper planner because I love the stickers and the fun and the colors, but I don't actually use it. So not helpful for me. But whatever it is for you, write those things down. And, like I said, this could be leadership is a lifetime journey. It's a 4-hour, 4-day topic. It is not a 1-hour thing, but this is a really just tangible, tactical thing that you can do today to begin to hone in on that leadership style. And take note. We don't spend a lot of time in today's world pausing and reflecting. So I would encourage you to find that time, to build that time into your rhythm, especially when you're working with people. I work with people all the time. That's what I do. If I have a meeting and I'm like, oh, that didn't go great, I didn't love that, take a pause and say, what about it? What about it? What about how I showed up impacted it? What about what I said? What did I do? And that's where a lot of these anchors have come from me. It's, oh man, I was in a meeting with this person and I did 97% of the talking. Well, what did they learn from it? What did they get from it? That's not helping them. So I need to teach less or tell less. I need to teach more. I need to ask more questions. I need to help them get to where they're going.
What I was going to say, what I love about this too, is when we think about defining leadership, you're leading in all aspects of your life. Like you're leading with your kids, you're leading with your spouse, you're leading with your clients, you're leading in your local communities, like church groups and things like that you belong to. And so all of those leadership opportunities take these core values that Laura's defining, and you can apply them to all aspects. How I lead my kids sometimes isn't how I lead my coaching clients. And I've really tried to shift that. And I've been very intentional about it. And I've started to ask my kids more questions and getting my kids to think bigger, because I'm like, holy cow, how cool would it be if I could teach my 12-year-old daughter to think like some of my amazing clients that I connect with every single week? How powerful will she be when she's 24? And I'm like, yes, I'm going to do that. And so when you're thinking about these principles that Laura's talking about, think about all aspects of your life that you can incorporate them in, because it exercises that muscle in different ways. And then it just becomes natural. It's almost like you just adopt this natural leadership style. I've done it with my friend group, and I've done it with, even when I go in for doctor's appointments, sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to take on this style with this doctor, and they don't expect it, and it leads to some really amazing conversations.
Yeah. And again, some of those anchors, pillars, whatever you want to call them, are going to be different for different areas of your life. And I think that's really strong, Lindsay. I'm actually 10 times more patient with people at work than I am with my family. And so that's something I'm working on at home, especially because, I got a toddler. The toddler years require a lot of patience, lots of patience. One of my anchors in parenting right now is to take a deep breath. It's just take a deep breath. Just take one before you open your mouth. Just take a deep breath. I do that very naturally at work, but it's not something that's carried over at home. So I think that's really, just like Lindsay said, figuring out who you want to be. How do you want to show up? How do you want to show up in all aspects of your life with all of the people that are there? And again, don't make 17 of these and try to work on them. Like it can be one for a season. Like maybe you have 4 anchors that really you tie to, but in this season you're working on one. Because that's another thing we do as leaders is we like to create all these amazing SMART goals, which is awesome. But when we have 10 of them, we're not going to get all of them done. So pick one area of your leadership to work on at a time. And find resources. There's so many resources on leaderships, so many of them, that it's an amazing, lucrative business leadership, because it's always experiential. We're always learning. We're always finding new ways. It's not something that you can master. That's why there's hundreds of thousands of books on it and podcasts and all of these things, right? Because there's always something we need to work on in leadership. So find those resources, those books, those podcasts, to help you grow in that specific area. And then come back and do another, and then take it further. There's lots of exercises and things that you can do with your teams, with your family, in lots of areas to work on all of this development, but it starts with you. And if you don't know who you are, you don't know how you want to show up, you don't know how you want to lead, You are intentionally creating a perception of your leadership and a culture within your organization, whether you're trying to do it or not. And so our goal with being a leader is to make that intentional, is I am showing up this way, and this is how I want to show up. Not, I'm just showing up, throwing paint at the wall, hoping it sticks. If something's going to stick, it might not be what you want. So that's why we take these pauses. That's why we do this reflection. That's why we do this work internally. It's a lot of mindset work. It's a lot of internal work. A lot of times as a leader in an organization, especially at the top, you're not going to have someone holding you accountable. If you've built a great team and you are approachable and you've built great trust, then they are hopefully going to give you that critical feedback and tell you when you're not hitting the mark. Or find people in your life, find a coach, find someone who's going to tell you when you're not cutting it, because we all need that accountability. But you need to be that for yourself as well. And those anchors will help. So I know we have about 10 minutes left. And I wanted to make sure I left some time for questions. And also, like I said at the beginning, if you came here with an intention to learn something or to ask a question and we didn't go through that, this is all very like surface. Each of these topics could be like a day's workshop. Feel free to ask it. And, maybe I'll have the answer. Maybe Lindsay will, maybe someone else in the room will, because again, leadership is not, I don't think you can ever be an expert at leadership. Some of the bigs might hate me for that, but I don't think you can truly ever be an expert, because we're always learning.
Everything is always shifting. And I think, and I'll say this for my real estate friends, the leader that we have to become in 2024 is a different leader than we've been in years past. And it's simply because the game is shifting. It's kind of like, I always say, it's like that little analogy of, that where the ladders shift in that game, where the staircases are constantly shifting, and it's like the little hobbits are cruising up the staircase and then all of a sudden it shifts. That's what's so fun about business. That's what I really kind of enjoy about business, because the game would be boring if you just like cruised up the same ladder all the time. But it's like, oh, now I'm cruising up this ladder and I'm going to jump to that ladder. And now that ladder has shifted, I might go down a ladder and then over here to this other ladder. And I feel like that really highlights like your evolution with leadership, because just when you think like, oh, okay, I've gotten it, it's like, nope, the little ladder shifts. And it's like, now I've got to become this other person. So I would encourage everybody to put together, I do this for myself too, your growth plan, your personal growth plan for 24. And what areas in your leadership do you need to grow in order to become the person that the game being the market is going to require you to be this next year? Because it is different every year, and we can't go into it with the same approach every year. That's why I love November, December. It's like such a freeing time to say like, I get to create who I want to be this next year, and it's a new evolution.
Yeah, but I think what's so important with what you're saying, Lindsay, is that mindset, right? That mindset of every challenge is an opportunity as a leader, versus a mindset of, well, I'm gonna master this. I'm just gonna learn it. I'm gonna master it, and I don't have to relearn anything. I wish.
Definitely not with
I kind
leadership.
of wish it was that way sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. I sit in Lindsay's boat 80% of the time, but about 20, maybe 25% of the time, I'm like, man, I just wish things would status quo a little bit and I wouldn't have to constantly pivot and change. So I think there's, it's okay to sit in that reality but you're always going to be learning. And I think going back to the beginning, leadership's not a title. It's not a position. It's not a role. It's behaviors. It's a lifestyle. Behaviors can be learned. They can.
And just remember, you don't want to be a trash can leader. Okay.
Yeah, don't keep the
just
trash
walk
can.
away with that.
Never have I. But I'm not a rager. I've done other things that are as impactful, but I'm not a rager. So that's not where I go. I go into like super fix it mode. Okay. Well, we have a couple minutes. Anyone have any questions, thoughts?
Next steps. What are people taking from this mastermind and carrying forward? I'll pick on people. Jessica, you're up.
Yeah, no, that it goes into, we're doing our goal setting right now and restructuring our team and trying to figure out what next year is going to look like, because there's a bunch of different business ventures. And so for me, it's finding where I fit in that niche, because I have people above me and I have people below me, but I kind of walk both sides of that line. So my leadership style changes depending on who I'm talking to. And that's probably not the best way that should be going. I should be more involved, more bred, but yeah, it's what I want to be. The big thing that take is what I want my leadership to be and what I want my team to think of me. Because I'd all love for the agents and the team members to think of me the way that Tulio thinks of me a little bit. Maybe not completely, but yeah, much more similar.
Yeah.
That is so good for you, Jessica. That is so good for you.
I would challenge you in that, because you said there's these specific people that see you a certain way. Think about your interactions with them. How do you show up for them? How do you talk to them? How do you behave around them? And how is that different? And why? Why is it different is a really good question. What is the environment that causes you to think you have to show up in a different way? But I love that.
Sarah.
I am going to retake the disc. I took it a long time ago, but I need to retake it. And then I think I can do what Laura was talking about and kind of define more who I am so that I can then define my leadership style.
James.
I really like the idea of developing a personal growth or personal leadership plan, a growth plan. I think it's something in the back of my mind is like, yeah, I'm always growing in leadership. I'm always growing. You know what I mean? Have this sort of this nebulous, I want to do this, I want to do that, or I'm going to do this to improve or that to improve. But I like the idea of making that a little bit more of an intentional focused plan, you know, kind of here's the action items, here's the steps, here's the things I'm going to implement to grow in personally and as a leader.
Yeah.
I love that for you, James. It's becoming intentional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Attention is so important.
Yeah. Miss Michelle.
So business wise, I'm like not so much in a leader. I've been a solo entrepreneur for years. So I've been toying with the idea, and well, not toying with it, just coming to the realization that maybe 2024 needs to be the year that stops and that I build a team. So it's been, yeah, it's like terrifying.
Welcome to the jungle. Great, messy, amazing place to be.
Hey,
Yeah.
James's wife is looking to be somebody's virtual assistant. So happy to connect with you.
Yeah, we'll have to chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, but just a lot of things, like I like the question of what areas do I need to grow to play the game in 2024, because it's gonna change. But then also I really like what was said about teaching, not telling, because that's going to be important as I'm growing a team, but also with my kids. That one hit hard right there.
Way to grow. Challenge.
It's so hard, I feel like, because we show up so intentionally in our business, and then it's like you only have so much gas in the gas tank when you transition into mom mode. Sometimes it's really hard to step back and say like, oh yeah, I need to be asking questions, and I need to not be yelling, and I need to not be telling, and don't be the trash can mom is what goes in my mind.
Well, and I will say, and I'll just give Lindsay some credit here. One of the things, and I think this applies whether you have kids, don't have kids, it applies in any area of your life, is something that she is really, really intentional about is transitional activities. And I'm horrible. Hi, I'm Laura and I have a problem. Not good at boundaries. I will go straight from working into whatever I'm doing in my personal life. So whether that's, I'll go straight from working into like an intense conversation with my spouse. I'll go straight from working into like doing all these things at home or with my friends. I'll be literally taking a work call in the car on my way to dinner with a friend. I will be like on the way to pick up my daughter and on the phone. I'm I've really tried, because of Lindsay's advice, to build in transitional activities. And I would say in your work life, in your personal life, even between meetings with your team, if you're going from a client meeting to a team meeting, like there needs to be built-in transition. And I spend about, 37 hours a week on Zoom. So, a minute feels like an hour virtually. And like, we don't have to have that waiting room time anymore, because we can hop from one call to another call to another call to another call. And so something that's been an intention of mine this year, and I'm still working on it, guys, I'm not great at it all the time, is building those transitional activities. Like, what does it look like? Is it a deep breath? Is it going for a walk or a hike or a bike ride? Is it just, giving myself 10 minutes in my office with my computer closed before I cross the threshold back into my house to take on role of spouse and mom? Or is it, I'm not going to take calls in my car, I'm going to listen to a podcast or music, or for me, I have like scripture reading in my car. So am I doing something like that on my way to dinner, or on my way to a client meeting, or on the way somewhere else, instead of filling every second of my time? So that's something that you challenged me with, and I've been really encouraged by, is like, how am I, again, intention with leadership, how am I setting my mindset for what I'm about to walk into? Client meeting, team meeting, family, whatever it is. We just go, and we don't stop to be like, let me reset. Let me take a deep breath. Let me remind myself that I want to teach, not tell. Let me remind myself of my growth plan that I said I was going to work on this quarter. Yep. Before I walk into my team meeting, this was the goal we set. I want to remind myself of that instead of just rushing.
30 minutes of transition time for me is needed before I go from work mode to mom mode. And it usually works best if I do a physical activity. So I invite you all to like really hone in into what is it for you, because everybody's is going to be different. So mine, I usually have it on my calendar where I don't take calls for an hour and a half before I pick up the kids, because I really like getting outside and going for a bike ride or going for a walk. I transition better. I'm not carrying that work energy into mom mode, because what I noticed I would do is I would be on the phone. Then I would just be like, shh, be quiet, I'm on the call, and the kids are they're excited. They're trying to talk about their day. And I mean, we could do this with our spouse too, if you don't have kids. And then it just treats the people that love you the most that they're not the most important. So that transition time is really awesome.
Yeah, before I started doing this, my spouse would get the worst version of me and not the best. And that's not fair. So whatever it is for you, friends, family, even your team, sometimes we like are shiny, ready for clients, doing the presentation, and then we hop on with our team and we're like, whoa, so any area, you can apply it anywhere. You want to show up as your best self for all the people that are in your care, that are part of your life. And it is hard because there's not always balance. You don't always have time for it. Sometimes you don't have the care you need for your kids, or you don't have this, or you don't have that place. So even if it is closing your computer for 10 minutes before you walk out the room, it can be anything. And then build up to, my lifelong Lindsay goals to be like, I'm going to go for a ride an hour before I do this. I'm not there yet. I'm a little bit more on some days. It's 10 minutes with the computer closed, but goals. We got to have something we're chasing at.
Lifelong Lindsay goals. I love that. Okay. Well, I definitely don't have it figured out, but it's what works for me. And I invite you into figuring out what works for you. So Laura, thank you so much for today. I know we're a couple minutes over, but I want to thank you guys for your time. Your time is your most valuable asset. So I hope you gain some powerful golden nuggets today. We invite you back to next month's Mastermind. So you'll be getting some email communications from us for next month. And if you have a topic that you're like, I'd really love to, deep dive into this topic, we are our community. We learn from each other. I'd love to hear from you guys on what you'd like to hear from us on, and share that with each other. So again, invite you into our next month's Mastermind, same time, same place, next month. And if you need any resources, have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And Sarah will share the disc link for all of those of you that want to take it. And if you have others, just email Sarah. She can get you guys that free resource. So thank you guys.